So first, let's talk a little bit about swordfish themselves, broadbill swordfish. They are called the gladiators of the sea, and for good reason. They are absolutely incredible. This is a brilliant predator. This is not a king mackerel, okay? This is a very, very sophisticated killing machine. It really is. They are an amazing animal that can live on the bottom, 2,000 feet down, where the water is 40 degrees, and they can thrive down there in the pitch black. I mean, just think about that for a second. A predator that lives 2,000 feet down in 40-degree water, pitch black, and could reach 700 pounds, even more. You know, there was recently, I'm sure a lot of you have heard, there was recently a giant swordfish caught down in the Keys that was, I think, 768 or something like that. You know, and that's not the biggest one that's out there. I assure you of that. That Nick's caught a lot of big fish, but that's not the biggest one. There are even larger ones. You know, so certainly you've got to take that into consideration that when you're going out there sword fishing, you may hook a 70-pounder or a 700-pounder. Now, of course, those 700-pound fish, I don't want nothing to do with that. That's way too big, way too scary, way too long of a fight. Chances of you even getting that fish in the boat are 1 in 7,000, okay? But most of the fish that you're gonna see out there are gonna be anywhere from 100 to 300 pounds. That's really the average, but again, a lot of larger fish as well. These fish migrate thousands of miles. They migrate all the way on up the eastern seaboard, all the way up to Nova Scotia. Okay, way, way up off of New England, and then all the way back down here and around the bottom of the Keys and up into the Gulf of Mexico and beyond. So they travel great distances. They're pretty much always moving. And they'll travel on the bottom, okay? In other words, very, very deep water right along the bottom. It really is an incredible creature. They also are equipped with specialized organs, okay? They have, I guess in simple terms, we'll call it a radiator that heats their vital organs, which allows them to see, to hunt, to swim, you know, to swim fast, and to operate efficiently in such deep, cold water. There are only a very few species on Earth that are equipped with these heat exchangers, you know, that literally warm up their brain, warm up their eyes. You know, it's such a sophisticated animal. And of course, they're equipped with a sword, right? A long bill. A lot of people think that swordfish actually stab their prey with that sword, and that is incorrect. Swordfish never stab prey with that bill, but they do use it to swipe at prey, squid, bait fish, and they stun the prey, they disorient it, turn back on it, and eat it. Okay, they don't stab it with their sword. They're capable of 50-mile-an-hour bursts. So you're talking about a fish that potentially is 500 pounds, but can burst at 50 miles an hour to chase down prey 2,000 feet below the surface in ice-cold water. Okay, again, an incredible animal. They will live to, you know, potentially 20 years. Some people say they've lived to even 30 years, but the average fish is 5 to 10 years old. Okay? So it's not a very long living fish like some other fish that we catch. But again, they can live, you know, for a few decades, obviously. And certainly the bigger ones, you know, have to be at least 15 to 20 years old, I believe, to be 500 plus pounds. And every year there are a lot of 500 plus pound swordfish caught. And it's important, again, to remember that, because when you go out there at night to target these fish, you better be prepared. You better be ready. This is no child's play. This is no little game. You're going out there to target a fish that, you know, is a monster, is an absolute monster. During the day, they will hunt, as I mentioned, right on the bottom because they're sensitive to light. They have giant eyeballs. They're sensitive to light. They don't like the sunlight, so they hunt on the bottom. Not only because it's dark and cool. Anybody else know why during the day they hunt on the bottom? Squid, because that's where their primary forage is. Their primary forage is squid. And during the day, squid live or, you know, swim right on the bottom. They'll also eat anything that pretty much is alive. Eels, a variety of different bonitas, mackerels, tuna, juvenile swordfish. They'll eat anything. They are not picky eaters. They really aren't. If it's alive and moving or looks alive and moving, they're going to attack it and eat it. Okay, so they're not very picky eaters. However, their primary forage, again, is in fact squid. A lot of the swordfish, too, that are caught, anybody ever hear of a pumpkin swordfish? Okay, there's a lot of swordfish that are caught. From the exterior, they look just like any other swordfish. However, when you cut that fish and you steak it, the meat is literally the color of a pumpkin. It's the color of that gentleman's shirt. Can you stand up for me? The guy wearing the pumpkin colored shirt, okay? You know, literally the flesh is that color. And that is because they're eating shrimp, an abundance of shrimp. There's a large red shrimp that lives on the bottom, again, 1,500 to 2,000 feet down. And when the swordfish are preying on these shrimp, an abundance of them, it essentially dyes their flesh, and they get that pumpkin color. Now understand that while these fish are down deep during the day, they swim up toward the surface at night. And years ago, decades ago, back in the 70s, 80s, into the 90s, if you wanted to catch a swordfish here in South Florida, which by the way is the swordfish capital of the world, there is no better place in the entire, on planet Earth, there is no better place to swordfish than right here. You are more likely to go out here and catch a swordfish on any given day, or multiple swordfish, than anywhere else on planet Earth. Okay, so we're very, very fortunate to have an extraordinary fishery right in our own backyard. And that's because we've got the ideal terrain for these fish. We've got the Gulf Stream current, which is constantly flowing north. Okay, so we've got a lot of water movement. And that's very important because it's easy for the fish to migrate in that current. We've got the right depth. We've got the right topography on the bottom. The geography of the bottom is ideal for swordfish behavior and swordfish habitat. So it really is a nursery ground right out here. So again, we're very fortunate. Like I said, during the day, they're on the bottom. At night, they will swim up toward the surface. Why? Anybody know? Okay, because the bait, the squid, is swimming up toward the surface, okay, to feed. You know, at nighttime, you get these little particles in the water, almost like krill, and that works its way up toward the surface. And what feeds on that is the squid. So they're working their way up toward the surface, and hot on their tails are the swordfish. They're working their way up toward the surface to feed on the squid and anything else that they can catch. And you have to understand, you know, when you look out here, everything looks flat. You know, you've got a flat surface, everything looks flat, but it's not. It's not. You know, we have got a really sharp sloping drop off. And once you get out there to around 1,000 feet, it really starts to drop. You know, from 1,000 to 2,000 feet, there's cliffs, there are hills, there are holes, massive holes, like big giant craters and depressions. And during the day, these swordfish will be down there in the deep, you know, in these craters and right on the edge of these holes and cliffs and craters feeding. But at night, as they come up toward the surface, water is being deflected through these craters and cliffs, and it's creating upwellings, and it's forcing nutrient-rich cold water up toward the surface. And that nutrient-rich cold water that's being pushed up toward the surface contains that krill and contains the squid and everything that we just talked about, that food chain. And of course, again, the swordfish are moving up along with all of that food. So as I was mentioning, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, you wanted to catch a swordfish, you went out here at night. Okay, and you swordfished at night along with the commercial fishermen, the longliners. And then somebody got the bright idea down in the Keys of saying, hey, I can fish for these things during the day, right on the bottom. And they perfected the technique off of Isle Morada. And it grew in popularity all the way up the coast here. And there are some guys, certainly local here, that are absolute specialists at daytime sword fishing. These guys are so good, it's ridiculous. I'm sure we've all heard of R.J. Boyle, okay? What's that? He's at your dock? Was he at your dock with two 500-pounders? Because I wouldn't be surprised. Of course he does. You know, the guy has swordfish blood in his veins. Okay, he really does. So there are some guys out here that are amazing. But point I'm making is everybody now is saying, hey, I don't need to lose sleep at night. I could just go out here during the day, you know, and just do a day trip and catch a swordfish. And you can. There's no question you can. So for the last 10 years or so, it seems like 98% of all sword fishermen have converted to daytime sword fishermen. You know, plus during the day, not only are you fishing the bottom for swords, but you could also fish for dolphin. You know, you can have a couple of rods out up on top and catch dolphin at the same time. So a lot of guys are doing this whole daytime gig. But keep in mind, the fish didn't go anywhere. You know, the swordfish characteristics have not changed. Fishermen have changed. The fish still come up toward the surface at night. They still follow those squid up toward the surface, and they're still out there at night up toward the surface within that top 500 feet of the water column. Okay, so it's still a very viable fishery. It's just a lot of guys don't do it anymore because they're more into the daytime gig. The problem with the daytime gig is, number one, the tackle. The tackle could be very expensive. You know, the standard in the industry is an LP. You know, that monster, the LPS 1200, that monster of an electric reel. Rod, reel, line, you're looking at about $6,000, okay, for one rod. And you're going out there and you're dropping one line with one bait right to the bottom for $6,000, okay, and you're only fishing one bait. And keep in mind, you know, lately guys are fishing two baits. They fish also a buoy rod. So they're doubling up their odds, so to speak, but it's not like the nighttime fishery. In addition to that, you really need to have a skilled boat handler, you know, behind the wheel, somebody running the boat, because you're running the boat into the current during the day. It's a different scenario than nighttime. Nighttime, we drift and dream. That's what we call it. All right, we drift and dream. You go out there, you set up in the right position, you set your baits, and we're going to talk about all of that, and you simply drift. That's it. And you just wait. You wait for that rod to double over, and you're hooked up to a swordfish. And while it seems like it's easy, of course it's not that easy, but it kind of is that easy if you do it right. So first let's talk about when. Okay, let's talk about when. Of the 365 days a year, you could go out here and go nighttime sword fishing 365 days a year. So there is not any time of the year when when you should not be sword fishing. First of all, the season is opened all year. There's no closed season. So that's first and foremost. Number two, there are always swordfish here. Sometimes there are more than other times, but this is their migratory route. This is their path of travel. So any day of the year, you can go out here and go sword fishing, which of course is ideal. You know what I'm saying? Weather permitting. Now, of course, understand that even though you can go out here any day of the year, if it's blowing 20 to 25, okay, from the northeast, do you want to go out there in January, you know, and go nighttime sword fishing? Trust me when I tell you, you don't, okay? Because understand you've got the Gulf Stream is running to the north. Any wind from the northwest, from the north or the northeast is colliding with that Gulf Stream current and building those wave heights. So what was potentially 2 to 4 foot seas with no wind, you know, during the day, or maybe with a 10 knot breeze, you get a 20, 25 knot breeze and you're dealing with 5 to 8, maybe 10, 12 foot seas, and that's not where you want to be at night. Okay, there's too many nice days. So of course, pick your days, you know, weather. Pick your good weather days, because it's dark, you don't see anything. It's pitch black, there's no city lights, and I'll tell you what, it could be a little spooky, especially for people who are unfamiliar with, you know, or don't have a lot of experience in nighttime fishing. Being 20 miles off the beach in the pitch black by yourself could be a little bit spooky. So make sure that you pick your days properly. So again, when is any time of the year. We tend to see bigger fish throughout the winter, but you know, here it is almost May and they just caught a 760 pounder. So that kind of throws that out the window. You know, anytime, you never know when there's going to be a big fish or, you know, any size fish. So, you know, I like to say, go whenever you can. You know, whenever the weather's right, go whenever you can. So let's talk about where, because now we know when. Let's talk about where. Who fishes out of Hillsborough Inlet? Here locally, right? Fort Lauderdale, Boca. Obviously, most of us are fishing here locally. There's ideal swordfish grounds, you know, swordfish territory, ideal everywhere from, oh gosh, Palm Beach all the way down off the Keys. But certainly here from Boca all the way down to Miami is the honey hole. You know, that's the epicenter of a hot swordfish bite is right out here. So, and because you're drifting, remember we talked about the Gulf Stream current? How fast does the Gulf Stream current move? Anywhere from minimum 3 to 4 knots, maximum 5+ knots, okay? So it's not like you're going out there and you're stopping on an X and saying, hey, I'm gonna fish right here. You can stop on that X in a mile, you're in an hour, you're 5 miles away. You're covering a lot of ground, okay? So it's not like wreck fishing to where you're going out there and trying to literally fish right on one set of GPS numbers. That's not what it's about. It's about fishing a particular depth. That's what it's about. The ideal depth at night to fish for swordfish is anywhere from 900 to 1,300 feet. 900 to 1,300 feet. If I had to narrow that down even more, I would say 1,000 to 1,200 feet would really be ideal. Now, even though they're on the bottom in up to 2,000 feet of water during the day, okay, and usually 16, 17, 1,800 feet, that's 1,600 to 1,800 foot is where we're primarily targeting these fish during the day, right on the bottom. But at night, when they come up, they're not coming straight up. They're coming inside and up. Does that kind of make sense? You know, they're coming inshore and up. So anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 feet, like I said, is ideal. However, you're not always going to drift due north, depending on the conditions. If you have a little bit of a southeast breeze, and if I stop my boat right here, instead of drifting due north, I may drift a little bit inshore. I may start at 1,300, but end up at 1,000. I may, you know, on the other hand, if I have a southwest breeze, I may start in 1,000 and it may push me out to 1,300 feet. Does that make sense to everybody? So get out there, stop the boat, okay? Stop the boat in 1,200 feet of water, okay? Just stop 1,200 feet of water, don't do a thing, and just pay attention for a little while, okay? Look at your chart plotter. Determine which way am I drifting. Am I being pushed inshore? Am I being pushed offshore? Am I drifting straight north? Okay, determine that. And then reposition your boat accordingly so you can drift across all of that prime territory. Okay, and it's easy to determine because, like I said, if you have a southeast breeze or an easterly breeze, one thing's for sure, I'm not being pushed that way. I know I'm being pushed this way. On the contrary, if I have a westerly breeze, I know I'm not being pushed into the wind. I know I'm going to be pushed offshore. So just think about that logic. If you have any wind from the west, stop on the shallower side. If you have any wind from the east, stop on the deeper side. Everybody picking up what I'm throwing down here? Okay, this way, when you're drifting, and you will be drifting north, there's absolutely no doubt. If you go out there and you drift south, you got a problem, right? Yeah, something's wrong. And I'm going to tell you, though, ironically, this has nothing to do with sword fishing, but on a recent deep drop trip, fishing for golden tilefish, in 900 feet of water in the Gulf Stream, I stopped the boat, and for the very first time in, I have no idea how many years I've been fishing down here, I drifted this way. And I was shocked. Like I wasn't sure what was happening. Okay, it was just a combination of the way the wind was and the current was, and the wind was a little bit stronger than the current on that particular day and literally pushed us south. It was really, really odd. But that rarely, and I don't want to say rarely, that will never happen when you're out there sword fishing in even deeper water, okay? It won't happen. So positioning is very, very important to make sure that you are drifting in that strike zone of 900 to 1,300 feet, either somewhere due north or, of course, drifting across that alley. You know, we'll call it Swordfish Alley. And it could be anywhere from Miami all the way up here to Boca. What we like to do, we fish out of Hillsborough Inlet. So when I leave to go sword fishing, guess what direction I'm moving in? Right? Doesn't that make sense? I'm going to run down to Hollywood, okay? And this way, at the end of the night, when it's time for me to come home, I'm right there, okay? And I've got a 40-minute ride home, sometimes even less, depending on how fast I want to go at night, you know? I mean, sometimes even less. I'm not going to start here and end up 20 miles north of here, okay? Or so, again, play it by ear depending on where you live and, you know, where your home port is, okay? Keep that in mind. Get out there, stop the boat, determine which way you're going to drift, reposition the boat, so this way you know you're drifting over that ideal territory, and now it's time to set the spread, okay? That's what we call it, setting the spread. We are typically fishing 5 rods, okay? 5 rods at night when we are sword fishing. The first thing that we're going to do is put our chum in the water, okay? And you may be saying, well, who chums for swordfish? We do, okay, with electronic chum. This is a submersible LED light, okay? Not ground Menhaden chum, okay, but electric chum. Okay, if your boat has underwater lights, great. If not, you absolutely need a submersible light. This could be equipped with, you know, a 12-volt plug. It could be equipped with alligator clips that connect to a battery. Whatever the case, this is going to be submerged or hung off the side of your boat 10 feet below the surface, and it will light up a giant green orb around the boat. Even though we have underwater lights, we often fish with 2 of these, one off the stern and one off the bow as well. The more light, the better. Swordfish are attracted to light. And not only are they attracted to light, but what else is attracted to light? Squid, okay? Squid and bait fish. And it is absolutely fascinating to go out here at night and drift for swordfish and to have these underwater lights, and all you got to do is just sit there and watch. And all of the different life that you see swimming in these lights is fascinating. Little juvenile sailfish this big, little dolphin this big, and of course it's not uncommon to see a 300-pound swordfish swim through your light, okay? And that's certainly exciting. So you see all sorts of stuff at night. So the light is not only to attract the swordfish, but more importantly, it's to attract the bait, which then in turn attracts the swordfish, okay? Not to say you can't go out here with no light, because you can, okay? The fish are still going to be around, but you will increase your odds tremendously by using some sort of submersible light. You know, at the very least, your underwater lights on your boat, you know, at the very least. So once we've got our light in the water, we know which way we're drifting, it's time to start setting our spread. We are going to do our very best to cover the water column, to cover the strike zone. That strike zone at night, we know, is that top 500 feet of the water column because they're moving up, okay? Really the top 400 feet of the water column. So we try and fish a variety of baits at different levels in that water column. And this way, as we're drifting with the Gulf Stream current, we really have a nice spread that's covering that top 400 to 500 feet. However, if you don't do it right, you could have one big fat tangled mess. And let me tell you something, running 20 miles offshore in the middle of the night and dealing with 5 lines all tangled together, it is not something you want to experience, okay? It could be a nightmare and really a pain in the butt. So you've got to do it right. So the first thing that we do is we set our shallowest bait, okay? And understand the tackle that we're using. Even before we get into setting our spread, let's talk a little bit about the tackle. This is a Chaos Rodzilla rated for 60 to 130 pound line. By the way, if you go out there, I will make sure This is a secret. If you go out there and you do not have chaos rods, you're not going to catch any swordfish. Okay? Don't even waste your time. I'm telling you, save your fuel. Okay? Sell your stuff and get the real deal. Okay? So in turn, rod's rated for 60 to 130 pound line. It's matched to a 50 wide reel. This is the standard in nighttime sword fishing. It's basically a big game outfit. Okay? It's a 2-speed reel loaded with anywhere from 50 to 80 pound monofilament. High vis makes it a little bit easier to see. This is really important at night to be able to see all of those lines, because again, you're dealing with 4 or 5 lines and you want to be able to have a nice spread that's organized and you know where everything is. So I like to fish that high vis line at night. Okay, and also we use these trolling, we use high vis line, right? Whenever we're trolling to track those lines behind the boat. It's essentially the same thing at nighttime when you're nighttime sword fishing. That high vis line makes a big difference. 2-speed reel, as I mentioned, also makes a big difference, especially on bigger fish. You can pop that thing into low gear and just winch them in. Okay, is it essential and mandatory? No. You can get away with single speed reels, but if you can, get away, or if you get your hands on, I should say, 2-speed reels, it's going to make a huge difference. Bent butt or straight butt rods, we fish them both, okay, and you can get away with either. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. They'll both get the job done, okay. Aluminum butts, obviously. Again, it's big game tackle. You're not going out there to target a 20-pound fish. You're not going out there to say, hey, I'm going to go sword fishing tonight, and I hope I only catch a 75-pounder. I don't want to catch anything bigger than 75 pounds. Okay, it doesn't work like that. You don't know the size of the fish that's going to eat your bait. There's no way to determine that. So don't you at least want to stand a fighting chance, right? I mean, you put in all of that time and effort. You hook a trophy fish, a fish of a lifetime. You want to at least stand a fighting chance. So go out there well prepared. Trust me, it's still going to be a sporty fight. These fish fight like crazy. They're super, super strong, and they fight like crazy. They will not give up. So that's our tackle, basic tackle. Like I said, anywhere from 50 to 80 pound diamond line works for us. The high vis is perfect. The chaos rod, 60 to 130 pound class, 50 wide reels, Simoneaux, pens. These are Maxell Ocean Maxes. Whatever you have will work. Okay, will work. Most importantly is that line, though. I have to stress. Make sure that your line is fresh. Make sure that it's free of any abrasions or nicks. This is probably the cheapest component in your entire setup is the monofilament, but yet probably the most important. It's the cheapest component, but yet the most important. You know what I'm saying? Because this is the only thing connecting you to that fish is that line. And if it's nicked or abraded or old, or it's been sitting out in your backyard in the sun for 4 years and you got it at Kmart at one of those blue light special baskets and you thought you were getting a deal, and you go out there at nighttime sword fishing with that, you're foolish. You're making a mistake. Okay, so make sure that you've got fresh line. These guys here will be happy to load all of your reels for you. So the first bait that we set, getting back to it, is that a dog? Oh, cute. We have a special guest tonight. So
you don't do double line?
We don't do, well, we'll get into the rigging in a second. But of course, yeah, we'll get into the rigging in a second. So the first bait that we set is our shallowest bait, and our shallowest bait is the furthest one away from the boat. Okay, so you'll notice on the side of the reel, what does it say? 50. So I know that this bait is going to be 50 feet below the surface. Okay, 50 feet below the surface, but it's going to be 300 feet away from the boat. 50 feet below the surface, 300 feet away from the boat. My next rod what does that say? 100 feet. So my next bait is 100 feet below the surface and 200 feet away from the boat. Third rod, 200 feet below the surface and 100 feet away from the boat. Fourth rod, 300 feet below the surface and 50 feet away from the boat. Why do we do it that way? Because imagine if you took your deepest bait at 300 feet and set it 300 feet away from the boat, you now have 200 yards of line between you and your bait. Okay, you follow what I'm saying? It just doesn't make sense. So it makes a lot more sense to fish your shallowest bait the furthest away from the boat, and your deepest bait as close to the boat as possible. So on our first bait, as we drop it down 50 feet, we're going to pop open our swivel. And keep in mind, the way that we rig, getting back to the double line, we've got our monofilament. The monofilament is doubled with a bimini twist. So yes, we have a bimini twist where we double the line, and that bimini twist is connected to a wind-on leader, okay? A 25-foot, 250-pound test wind-on leader. They're very simple to connect to your double line with a simple loop-to-loop connection. If you are unsure of how to do that, on the back of the package of the wind-on leader that's right on the wall right there, it gives you instructions on how to connect your wind-on leader to your double line. Very, very simple, okay? At the end of that 25-foot, 250-pound test wind-on leader, I've got a 300-pound test diamond ball bearing snap swivel crimped on. We're not using knots. We're not tying knots in 250-pound test line. We're using crimps, okay, a very good crimp. If you're afraid to crimp, you shouldn't be. It's very simple. There are crimping kits. You can buy a crimping tool. You buy the appropriate size crimp for the line. Okay, it's all labeled appropriately. You just got to read the package, you know, do a little bit of homework and crimp it properly, and that crimp will never come undone. I mean, that's a bulletproof connection. It really is. Far greater, far stronger than any knot you're going to tie in 250-pound test. So we've got our swivel right there. Now on that swivel, I need a volunteer. How about you? I knew I can count on you. Hold that. So just don't hit me with the rod tip, okay? Now our rig itself, 6 to 8 feet, 250-pound test, okay, 250-pound test, 9.0 to 11.0 VMC J hook. We're not fishing circle hooks at night. The hook is crimped on, again, just like everything else. On the opposite end of the leader, we have another barrel swivel, a heavy-duty 300-pound barrel swivel that's crimped on. So I'm essentially doubling my swivels. I'm doing a barrel swivel on here, which is then connected to a snap swivel on here, okay? Because the last thing that I want is this to twist and tangle. Because I don't know, you know, as I'm feeding that bait out, sometimes if you don't have these swivels, this bait will come back up on the line and cartwheel on the line. And you don't know it. You don't know it because you're fishing more than a pound of lead, and you can't tell when you're tangled, you know, or when it wraps around the leader. So I always like to add a couple of swivels like that, okay, just to ensure that doesn't happen. Plus, you can have baits that are pre-rigged on these leaders, where if you want to put a fresh bait on, all you have to do is open up the snap, you know, take that leader off, and then just put another leader on there. The rig itself, again, is very simple. This is the same rig that we're using for either squid or live bait. Those are the two baits that we're going to fish at night. We're going to fish a rigged squid, or we're going to fish a live bait, which may be a goggle eye, it may be a blue runner, or a rainbow runner. Here's a secret for you. I don't know how much of a secret it is, but if you don't know it, I guess. Out here, right outside Hillsborough Inlet, there's an outfall, what we call a stink hole, okay, where there's a sewer pipe that pumps sewage into our ocean, right out here. That's not the secret part, okay? I'm not sure if you weren't aware of that. There's 5 of them up and down the coast. Okay, there's a couple up there too. Anyhow, at that stink hole, you can stop there any day of the week on your way out to the swordfish grounds, and you drop down a big sabiki rig, something like this. Okay, something designed for big blue runners and goggle eyes. And you will catch rainbow runners like this, big rainbow runners. And they make ideal live swordfish baits. The only problem is they don't stay alive very well in a small bait well. You need a very large circular bait well. These big rainbow runners will not stay alive in your typical 70-gallon transom well, like on even aboard my CV. You know, they just don't stay alive in there. They need a big circular 150-gallon well or something like that. But that is an absolute ideal live bait for swordfish, are the big, large rainbow runners. Like I said, goggle eyes is another great bait, or blue runners is another great live bait. But the staple is rigged squid, just a rigged squid. And do not think that, oh, if I can't get my hands on any live bait, I'm not going to do well. Absolutely not. Okay, go. As long as you can get some nice big squid, go. Now you'll notice on my rig, I don't know if you can see this or not, but at the top of the hook, above the crimp, I've got a piece of the leader that's sticking out about 2 inches. Okay, you see it right there? Hopefully, you know, again, I'm not sure if you could all see that. Okay, so when you take that squid and you stick that hook in that squid, at the top of the squid, that little tab sticks up, right up at the point of the top of the squid. And I wanted to display it, but I thought about it and said, you know, I really don't want to get my hands all squiddy and nasty at this seminar, because squid stinks. So I wasn't going to do it. So anyhow, you just stick that up in the top of the squid, and that helps fasten the squid right to the hook. It prevents the squid from sliding down. Okay, it's really simple, really fast, and works great. So whenever you crimp that hook on, leave a tab just like that, you know, sticking out of the crimp. Only if you're going to use this for squid. If you are going to attach a live bait to this, then trim that right down to the crimp and just bridle the hook right to the top of the goggle eye or the rainbow runner or the blue runner, right to the top of its head. But the same rig could be used for both.
Those double crimps?
No, just a single crimp. So in turn, my bait's now hooked. I'm going to drop my bait in the water, okay, and 50 feet down on the reel, okay, is a loop. It's a loop right on the line that I tied with wax rigging floss. Okay, everybody know what wax rigging floss is? Marshall, do you have any wax rigging floss here lying around somewhere? Something tells me you do, okay? And in turn, that wax rigging floss, by just using a variety of half hitches, you can easily tie a loop in the line. It'll go right through the guides. It's not obstructive. It doesn't damage the line whatsoever. Okay, and it's very simple to work with. Now, right on that loop, which is 50 feet away from this swivel. How do I know it's 50 feet away from the swivel? Because when I rigged it, I measured. Okay, so it's 50 feet away from this swivel. That is where I'm going to attach this. And what this is just simply a large bank sinker, anywhere from 16 to 24 ounces. Usually we do 20 ounces, works ideal. I take the bank sinker using a little wire tie and I connect it to a little Lindgren Pittman Electrolume light. Okay, again, just to attract more attention to the bait. It has a snap right on the top of it, and I just snap that right to the loop. Okay, everybody with me so far? And keep in mind that these little electrolumes, they're water activated. So even if you don't turn it on, once it reaches a certain depth, the top collapses and it turns on. However, I highly recommend that you turn it on manually. Okay, don't let the water pressure turn it on. Turn it on manually. Why? Because a lot of times the swordfish will come up, he'll eat that bait, he'll come right up toward the surface and just start screaming across the surface before you even know you have a bite. You have no indication that you have a bite. You're looking out and suddenly you see a green light go zoom right across the surface. And you're like, did I just see what I thought I saw? And you got him on, he's on there. But if you do it automatically, what happens is when that light reaches the surface, it goes off and you don't see it. So in turn, by turning it on manually and leaving it on, it's always illuminated, okay? We fish the same setup on all of the rods. The same lead, the same light, different colors. Some are green, some there's one of them that's called disco, which is like a variety of different lights strobing. There's red, there's white, there's blue. We've caught fish on them all. If I had to pick one in particular, I would say green. Okay, I would say green. That's just a natural bioluminescent color, okay, is the green. So again, 50 feet down on the line is that loop. It's where I'm connecting this. When I'm reeling in a fish or reeling in my line because I want to move or I need to change a bait, what happens with this? I've got to disconnect it, right? As it approaches the rod tip, I've got to pop this open and take it off the loop. Understand that. This is not going to go through that guide. It's not going to do it, no matter what. And if you're fighting a fish and this hits that top of that rod tip, you're asking for trouble. So it requires a team effort. Whoever's fighting the fish, you need obviously somebody else on the boat who can unclip the light really quickly, okay? So I know that this rod says 50 on the side. I know my loop is 50 feet, or let me rephrase that. I'm going to back up a second. So there's a loop 50 feet away from the bait where I connect this, okay? Then as I'm letting this out, depending on the number on the side of the reel, will designate where there's a second loop on the line. And that may be at 50 feet, 100 feet, 200 feet, or 300 feet. And on that second loop is where we're connecting this, okay? This is basically a glorified bobber. That's all it is. It's a balloon. Some guys use milk jugs, okay? I like to use a balloon. It's very simple. And on the top of my balloon, what do I have on there? A glow stick, because guess what? You're not seeing this balloon in the pitch black 300 feet away from the boat. You're not going to see it, okay? But you will see it with this glow stick. You have to attach the glow stick to the top of the balloon with black electrical tape. Don't use anything else. I'm telling you right now, it won't work. Duct tape won't work, Scotch tape won't work, crazy glue won't work, okay? You need black electrical tape. So now, this is the float. This is keeping my bait suspended at a certain depth. May it be 50 feet, 300 feet, whatever that depth is that I designate. My first bait, again, I know that my first bait, I want it 50 feet below the surface. So I have my lead and my light, and 50 feet away from, or 50 feet above the lead and the light is where the balloon is. Not 50 feet away from the bait, because remember that that bait is 50 feet away from the lead. Am I confusing everybody enough yet, or are you kind of following me?
How far
Okay.
is your lead from your bait? Because if your balloon's 50, where's your lead?
Okay. My lead is 50 feet away from my bait, okay? This is 50 feet away from my lead on the first rod. On my second rod, this is 100 feet away from the lead. On the third rod, it's 200 feet away from the lead. And on the fourth rod, it's 300 feet away from the lead.
So the light's
Okay.
always 50 feet away.
Correct. The light and the lead are always the same distance away from the bait. That is exactly right. The float is what varies, okay? Because the float is what is suspending that lead and is what, is what's acting as a bobber. Now understand, when you let this out too, it's gonna float out away from the boat, and you're gonna feed out your line, and you're gonna get it way out there, because this is my shallowest bait. I want it to be as far away from the boat as it could be. This is gonna be the furthest one away from the boat, is gonna be my shallowest bait. Once that is set, we're then gonna grab our next rod, okay? And we're gonna slowly, now of course, depending on how many people you have on the boat, if you're a well-oiled machine and you have 3 or 4 guys, you can let your whole spread out in a matter of minutes and get the entire spread out. If there's only 2 people on the boat, it takes a little bit more effort than that, because you can only let them out, slower. So again, it all depends as to how many people are on the boat. So you'll let your first one out, it's way out there, put in a rod holder, Okay, sometimes depending on your boat, depending on the wind, depending on the conditions, you may be drifting side to, and all 4 of your rods are lined up right across, right along the gunnel, and it's just perfect. You've got far float, second float, third float, fourth float, and you're like, beautiful. On other times, the boat is going this way, and you've got all 4 rods coming right off the bow, and all 4 lines are right next to each other, and all 4 balloons are right there, and you're like, oh my God, we're in trouble, okay, because this is going to be a big fat mess. So you have to adapt to whatever the situation is when you're out there. Don't be afraid to move rods around. Don't be afraid to move the boat into a different position. You've got to work with whatever it is that you're dealing with. Like I said, the ideal scenario is way up in the bow. I've got my far bait that's way out there. The next one down is the next one closer, and then right off the stern is right there. Okay, that would be the ideal scenario, but it doesn't always work like that. Okay, it really doesn't, and sometimes you have to adapt. But be very careful. Be very careful, because you don't want to take your far bait. You got your whole spread is set. You don't want to take your far bait and walk it across these and put it back here in the back corner, because that could be trouble. So again, it requires a team effort. It's a science. It really is. It's a science, but it's achievable. You can go out there. Guys have been doing this forever. They're still doing it now, and you certainly can do it as well, as long as you put some time and effort into it and think about what you're doing and think about where those baits are and, and how your rig is reacting, so to speak. So we get our baits out. We've got, like I said, our 50-foot bait is the furthest one away from the boat. If you're fishing a combination of live bait and dead bait, in other words, squid and goggle eyes or squid and blue runners, alternate them. I've got a squid over here, then a live bait, a squid, and then a live bait, okay? If you're fishing all live baits, obviously they're all live baits. If you're fishing all squid, then they're all squid. If you have a combination of both, then, alternate them. Like I said, this way you've got both in the water, because some days they'll react better to the live baits and some days they'll react better to the squid. So it's always a better idea to have both. Get your second bait out, get your third bait out, get your fourth bait out. Your 5th bait is what we call a tip rod. No balloon, okay? Same rig, same everything, but no float. So now I have 50 feet below the surface, 100 feet below the surface, 200 feet below the surface, 300 feet below the surface, and a tip rod. We're fishing it straight down. Right here, we'll drop it down 500 feet. Okay, it's literally going straight down 500 feet. That tip rod is constantly being worked, meaning your other 4 rods with your floats, once they are set, you're forgetting about them. It's set, reels are locked up, drags are set, clickers are on, you're just waiting for a bite. Okay, as long as the boat's drifting properly and you're not, potentially getting any tangles, you're forgetting about those rods. Your tip rod, you should work. You should drop it down 500 feet, let it sit for 10, 15 minutes. Reel it up 25 feet, let it sit for 10, 15 minutes. Reel it up 50 feet, let it sit for 10 minutes. Drop it back down another 50 feet. In other words, work it through the water column. Keep it moving, okay? Keep it moving up and down through the water column. You don't have to. You could just leave it sitting there, okay? But it's a good idea, like I said, to keep it moving through the water column. And oftentimes you'll see that tip rod, ironically, is the one that gets hit the most, is that tip rod, as long as you keep working it. When you do get a fish on, nighttime sword fishing, I like to say this. You go out there, you put in all of this effort, you finally got the spread set, everything is right, you get a fish on, reel everything else up, okay? Reel everything else up, because you now have 4 lines that are going out and down and out. Remember that. You've got a bait that's horizontal. You've got a bait over here, you've got 50 feet of horizontal line to a lead, then you have a vertical line that goes up to a float, and then you have a horizontal line that goes over to the boat, right? So you have this like Z, 4 of them. And now you have a very angry 250-pound swordfish that is not cooperating. You ask me, that's a recipe for disaster. Focus on that one fish. Reel everything else up. Get it out of the water as quickly as you can, okay? Unless you have a team of 3, 4 guys on the boat and everybody's really dialed in and everybody knows exactly what the other guy's supposed to be doing and how he's supposed to be doing it, you know, potentially you can leave a couple of other lines out, because if there's one swordfish around, you may hook another one. I don't know. I don't look at it that way. I say you get one on, mission accomplished, get everything else up and focus on that fish, okay? These are not, you know, these are not a joke. Swordfish are not a joke. They're not something that you can manhandle or manage. It's up to them what happens. It's not up to you what happens, okay? They're crazy. They are. They're crazy, okay? We've had swordfish. The last time we were out nighttime sword fishing, we're just drifting. Everything's quiet, calm, nothing going on. In what felt like 2 seconds, here comes a lit up, bright purple, 150, 175-pound sword. Not a, you know, real big fish, but certainly a quality fish, racing right at the boat, just 50 miles an hour, just flying right at the boat, dragging our rig with it before we even knew we had a bite. Okay, I mean, literally, and Carlos, my co-host, grabs the rod, just cranking, trying to get all the slack up. By the time he came tight, the fish was over there, and pulled the hook on him. Okay, we never even got that fish. But it all happened so fast. These things do not play around. They really don't. So keep in mind, as you're drifting along, like I said too, when I said before, you know, your drag is set, your reel is locked up, you've got that horizontal line from the bait to the lead, and then you've got the vertical line going up to the float, and then you've got the horizontal line going back to the bow. When that fish eats that bait, there's plenty of slack there for him to get it down his throat and to get hooked. I'm not letting that fish run, okay? It's not like, whatever, a dolphin eats a live bait and you're letting them run before you lock it up. No, swordfish don't nibble, okay? They don't nibble. They inhale. They literally inhale. And if that fish inhales that squid or inhales that live goggle eye, by the time you even see this on your rod, you know, by the time you see any indication of a bite, it's not because he's playing with the bait. He's not nibbling. He ate it. Okay, he ate it. It's in his mouth or down his throat already. He already ate it. So all you have to do is just start cranking. The idea is to crank, get all of that slack line out of the water. You know, get tight on the fish as quick as you can to bury that hook in the fish. Also understand though, swordfish have very soft cartilage around their mouth. Very, very soft. And it's very easy to pull a hook on these fish. You know, if you get them right in the corner of the mouth right there and you put too much pressure, it's not uncommon to pull that hook out. You get them down in here in their throat, so to speak, tough, bony area, you got him. That hook is buried inside him in there, you got him. He's not gonna come off. But you get him anywhere around the mouth, very easy to pull a hook. It's also not uncommon to snag these fish, because remember what I said, that they'll approach a bait, they don't stab the bait with their bill, but what they do is they unleash all of this power. You know, it's almost like, gosh, I don't want to say, you know, a reflex, but they'll approach a bait, their entire body will tense up, and they'll just unleash that fury with that bill to swipe at the bait. That's a tremendous amount of power. And when they do that, the hook often wraps around their bill, okay? Or sometimes it's not uncommon to have them foul hooked in the dorsal fin, foul hooked or wrapped around the tail. I mean, all sorts of different scenarios will happen. You know, it's not always right in the mouth the way that you want it to be. You know, like I said, all sorts of different scenarios will happen. So you want to apply a lot of drag to make sure that you bury that hook, but you don't want to apply too much drag, because for all you know, you just have them right in the corner of the mouth right there, and you can easily pull that hook right out of that fish. So it's all a matter of balance, all a matter of really kind of feeling it out. And I like to say, if you get a nice fish on and he's screaming line off the reel and you're fighting him for an hour, you got a good hook in him. He's hooked good if you haven't lost him in an hour. With swordfish, you'll tend to lose those fish in the first minute or the last minute of the fight, okay? Later on tonight, you'll be like, oh, wait, now I get that, okay? The drag should be strong, but not too strong. Not too strong. However, remember that every second that that fish is swimming around in the water is one more second that he could get away, right? So at some point, you have to apply more pressure to get the fish in, closer to the boat because, every second he's in the water, he can get away. And swordfish are masters of escape. Okay, anybody ever lose a swordfish? Anybody ever go sword fishing and not lose a swordfish? I mean, I'm telling you, if you go enough, you're going to lose swordfish. It's going to happen. You're going to pull hooks on them. Okay? You never caught.
You only have 2 rods.
Okay, so his question is, are you fighting the fish with the rod and the rod holder? And the answer is, some people do, because you're not going to take this, put it under your arm. I got him. I got him. No, I'm good. I got him. No, he's only 300 pounds. I got it. It's good. No, let's put it over here. I don't ever want to have kids. I'm good. Okay, I got it. So the answer is most guys, or a lot of guys, believe it or not, do. They leave the rod right in the rod holder, okay, and they just crank. Or, more importantly, you need a harness, okay? Don't say, you need a harness. Well, why fight them out of a rod holder? I mean, some people do. I get that, okay? But that's right. Okay, or turn the boat if it's a center console. There's a lot of options. But I highly suggest a harness, okay? You need a fighting belt, okay? And designate who is the angler that's going to be fighting that fish. Because if you have 4 guys on the boat and one of them weighs 125 pounds and one of them weighs 325 pounds, this is not going to fit all of those guys universally. Okay, it has to be adjusted to fit the angler. So make sure that it's adjusted to fit the appropriate angler, prior to hooking a big fish. That's not when you want to start messing with, here you go, hold that again for me, okay? It's got, different straps that you can adjust, so make sure that it's fitted appropriately. And with a harness like this, it puts all of the pressure right there on your upper thighs, okay? And you can... Good. No. And you can easily apply a tremendous amount of pressure to a big fish using stand-up tackle. Okay, and again, understand this is not only wrapped around you, it is also clipped to the reel. So you can take your hands off the rod and reel, lean back, and just sit there and crank. Okay, it's a very sporty way of fighting fish, and it's a lot sportier than fighting them out of a rod holder. However, if you don't have a harness, rod holder will do just wonderfully, especially with a bent butt. A little bit harder with a straight butt rod, but with a bent butt rod, you certainly can fight them, out of a rod holder. However, remember that these fish, especially when they approach the boat and they're closer to the boat, they'll race under the boat, they'll race around your motors, they'll race around the front of the boat. If that rod is jammed in a rod holder, you may not be able to react quickly enough. So that's why a harness sometimes is a better choice. But also understand that when that fish is next to the boat, if you are fighting them out of a harness, unclip the reel. Okay, unclip the reel. Because if I'm strapped in, right here off the side of my boat, and I'm leaning back, and that fish is potentially 50 feet away from the boat, and I'm still strapped in, and he goes right under the boat. Think about what's going to happen. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to lose that fish because there's no way that I'm going to be able to lean down and over the rail quickly enough because I'm strapped into the rod, and the fish now went under the boat. So unhook the reel. Okay, so you can easily bend down if you had to, or lean the rod down if you had to, or maneuver quickly. So whenever the fish is close to the boat, do not be strapped to the reel. Okay, plus it's a little bit dangerous as well when that fish is so close to the boat. You know, speaking of danger, I just want to kind of take a quick second to point something out. This right here is called the $1.89 Lifesaver. Okay, $1.89 Lifesaver. You take every single person on the boat, take one of these and stick it in their pocket at night. Just have it right in their pocket. God forbid you fall off that boat at night, you're not going to find me. You'll find this, okay? Me waving this out in the distance, you're going to see this. I promise you, you're going to see this, okay? Because you'll see this when it's strapped to the top of a balloon 300 feet away from the boat. You can see this perfectly. Okay, and if I'm out there waving this in the air, you're going to find me. Okay, so it's something very, very simple, but you've got to do it. Listen, nighttime sword fishing is no joke. Like I keep saying, you're fishing, not only are you in ultra deep water, anywhere 1,000, 11, 12, 1,300 feet of water, you're dealing with that current where, like I said, you're moving at 3 to 5 miles an hour at the minimum. You drop something in the water, think about what 5 miles an hour is. That fast. Literally that fast. So don't think that you're just going to be right there next to the boat, you know, if God forbid you fall off. And accidents happen. Listen, accidents happen on the water, people. They happen, okay, when you least expect it. So you have to take safety very, very seriously out there because there's no second chances. You know, you're not going to find somebody, okay? It's hard enough to find them during the day. Forget it at night. It's impossible to find them, absolutely impossible. So not only do you need the glow light, you know, or some sort of strobe or a flashlight, you know, something as a signaling device, but of course your boat has to be equipped with the proper safety equipment. You're dealing with deep water, you're dealing with a lot of current. It's also the shipping lanes. There are freighters that are coming by at night. I'm not talking about little ships, I'm talking about freighters. Okay, you're out there and you're like, what's that noise? What's that noise? Oh, that's nothing. It's an 1,100-foot freighter bearing down on us. Okay, and you've got all these lines set that are, you know, way out away from the boat. You've got to pay attention to what's going on. On top of that, pitch black. Throw that into the picture as well. And we also know, you know, springtime, summertime, we get these storms at night too, right? Where suddenly it's absolutely beautiful out. Next thing you know, this thunderstorm comes rolling across and it goes from flat calm to, you know, really nasty, really quick. So make sure that you take safety as the #1 priority. There is no fish that's worth your life. I said that one time and a guy emailed me and said, well, you're not a true fisherman. I'm like, excuse me. I'm like, safety, I don't care. There's no fish that's worth my life. I don't know about you guys. So, you know, something very small can make a very big difference. Make sure you've got a spotlight on the boat. You know, we're fortunate, our CV, we're equipped not only with a state-of-the-art Furuno radar where we can track everything, we also have a night track system with basically a nighttime infrared camera system that makes everything look like daytime. So you can see everything. We've even had instances out there, where we're drifting and you can hear a boat, but pitch black, there are no lights at all, okay? And you're looking, you can hear another boat right next to you somewhere running up on you. And I can see him on the radar. He's a mile away, 3/4 of a mile away, half a mile away, coming right at me, but no running lights, nothing. And they'll come right up on top of you, and guess who it is? Customs and Immigration, okay? And I'm like, yeah. You guys could have, been not so stealthy. I mean, I understand why they do what they do, but it could be a little bit scary because you don't know who's sneaking up on you out there in the middle of the night, So, yeah, you've got to take it really, really seriously, okay? Not only fishing in general, but when you get that fish next to the boat, as these fish approach the boat, you'll see the gloves are going on. And I'm not talking about these little cheesy, cheap gloves. These, as you can see, are really thick leather welding gloves, or whatever they are, okay? That bill is jagged. It's gnarly. It's serrated, okay? It's not like a knife. It's like a serrated saw on both sides. And I can tell you from personal experience, I've been whacked in the ankle by a swordfish bill, and it hurt. Okay, it hurt really, really bad, and there's horror stories of people that have really gotten hurt from a swordfish bill. Because don't make the mistake of getting that fish up next to the boat. You're right here, you've got a gaff in it, you're looking down, go, wow, he's so nice, and he goes, whack, and hits you right in the face, okay? That has happened to people. Do not take that bill lightly. Okay, understand that that is a very dangerous weapon that fish has, and he will use it out of revenge. I swear, I think they know. They're like, huh, you want to eat me? I'll show you. Okay, so I'm telling you, use the gloves. Okay, don't stick your face anywhere near where that fish can reach you with that bill until he's officially expired. Okay, because he will do it. He will. As the fish approaches the boat, okay, when it comes time to gaff, I've got two examples of gaffs here. Are you going to gaff a 300-pound swordfish with this gaff? That's what you want. You want a 4-inch hook. You want a 5-inch hook. You want something that's going to grab some meat, that has a big gap, okay? This isn't doing anything. Okay, you're going to stick this in a swordfish, he's going to turn one time and it's going to rip right out. So a 2-inch hook is not the ideal scenario for swordfish. You really need a large gap, large gap with a large gap. Harpoons, sometimes guys will use at night, but you don't really need it. The difference is during the day. Geez, I hope that doesn't fall on me. Okay. Now, we certainly carry 2 or 3 of these, okay? It's only $399, This will go great with your new 5-gallon bucket, all right? But anyhow, it's obviously a little bit excessive, clearly. This is for guys that are targeting 1,000-pound blue marlin, I don't know, big giant tiger sharks. I have no giant bluefin tunas. It's a little excessive, obviously. But point is, you want the right equipment. You need a large flying gaff, potentially a harpoon on the boat, okay, because a harpoon will help you stick that fish, before it's right up next to the boat. Understand some of the bycatch too. One of the bycatch that at nighttime you'll see out there, swordfish have one predator. Anybody know what it is? Mako Sharks, okay? Think about how big a Mako shark has to be to eat a 300-pound swordfish, okay? There are giant Mako sharks out here that you don't see them during the day. You don't probably never see them, but every now and then one will pop up and will attack a hooked swordfish, or it'll come right up next to the boat. And we're talking 500, 600, 700 pounds. Okay, a friend of mine on a boat called the Reaper, they were out there a few years back, and this giant Mako shark come right up in the light, right by the boat. So this guy, Corey, who was running the boat, says, I'm going to catch him. Okay, I heard this whole story. So he throws a bait, big wire leader, hooks the thing, they fight it. Sue has a .357 Magnum on the boat. Okay, shoots it 5 times, and the thing is still alive. Okay, these, again, big animals out there, monsters out there. So you've got to be careful, Not that you're going to see that every day. That's, not common, but it certainly can happen. But safety has to be a #1 priority. So as you're drifting along, at night, you're not going to see a lot of other fishermen out there because not a lot of people are nighttime sword fishing. There was a time, I remember days, where you couldn't find, it was like a parking lot out there. On a Friday, Saturday night, calm, you could go boat, and everybody's fishing 4 or 5 lines. It literally was like a parking lot. You see one other boat now, I'd be surprised. The only thing you're seeing now are the buoy boats. okay, the commercial buoy guys. And let me explain to you how that works. These guys are going out there with buoys, and off that buoy is 1 or 2 baits, I believe 2 off each buoy, and they have a series of buoys. So they stop at a particular point, they drop a buoy in, then they move along a certain, distance, we'll just say 100 yards, and they drop another buoy. And 100 yards, and they drop another buoy, and so on and so forth. So what happens is you get out there now, and each of these buoys has a little strobe light on top of it. And once they're all set, you could look right up the line, and you see buoy, 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 buoy. You see all of these lights. And if there's a couple of buoy boats out there, these guys are out there almost every night. They know where the swordfish are, right? Where do you want to fish?
Right by them.
I love this guy. All right. Pretty damn close to him, okay? But you got to be careful because there's all of these buoys out there, and you don't want your fish tangled with their buoy. And I can tell you, these commercial guys, they don't like you as much as you think they like you. Yeah, don't get anywhere near their buoys. I'm telling you, they don't really like you. So, they're out there to make a living. They're working hard. They're out there all night long. But there's a lot of buoys. That's one thing that we're dealing with now out there, which is why there's this whole new thing going on that I haven't even done myself yet, and I'm looking forward to trying it. But guys are going out there at night and trolling swordfish, okay? And they're trolling them because there's so many buoys that they can't set their typical spread. But if you're controlling the boat as to where you go, they literally troll in between all of the buoys, okay? And they're turning on their underwater lights, and they're fishing 2 large planers, just like we would for king mackerel or for wahoo with planer rods. And they have baits suspended below the water column. And then they have a couple of baits up on top as well, like squid skipping right below the surface. And then they have pitch baits. Pitch baits meaning they have a live bait that's rigged and ready, and they have a squid that's rigged and ready. And all they do is look out behind the boat in the light. And when a swordfish comes up in the light, if he doesn't hit one of the baits, they throw a pitch bait. Okay? Just like you would pitch a blue marlin or you would pitch a white marlin. And they're pitch baiting swordfish at night, trolling right out here. Really cool stuff. Okay? Takes a specialized, specialized effort with specialized tackle. Again, bent butt rods just like these with the planers. It's taking it to a whole other level. It really is. It's taking it to a whole other level, but you can maximize on depth because you control in a particular depth. If you want to stay in 1,200 feet, it doesn't matter what the conditions are like. You can stay in 1,200 feet, Whereas when you're drifting, you know what happens when you're drifting sometimes? I'm going to tell you this. You're out there, you start off drifting, you're in 1,300, you're drifting along for 2 hours. You haven't had a bite. And now you're in 1,100 feet, let's just say. And you're like, I really want to be back out there in 1,300. I don't know why, but 13 seems right tonight. And then you look out and you go, man, I got to reel all 5 of those in. I got to unrig this. I got to unrig that. You want to do the seminar? No, you can't slow troll 5 rods. Come on, let's be honest with each other. Very, very slow. Point I'm saying is the amount of effort to reel everything up, to then move and reset everything is not a 5-minute job. That's an investment in time. Now, it's worth it if you want to, obviously get on the bite and fish in the depth that you want to fish in, then certainly it's worth doing that. But a lot of people get complacent and they say, well, you know what? Nah, let's just keep drifting. I don't really feel like bringing everything up. Let's just keep drifting. Sometimes that pays off, sometimes it doesn't. But just be prepared and understand that when you do make a move, it's going to take some time and effort to bring everything up to reset. Okay, and oftentimes we'll bring everything up and we'll reset, and you're not resetting right there. You're either running back down south, okay, or you're running to, a slightly different area. So it is an investment in time. Getting back to, you're fighting this fish either in a harness, out of a rod holder, whatever it is. Fish is approaching the boat. You've unhooked your lead Obviously, your balloon is gone. And remember those balloons with the floats that we talked about earlier? As you're reeling that up, you can reel that into the rod tip and it'll bust right off. Okay, unlike the lead, which obviously won't go through the rod tip, but the balloon will bust right off at the rod tip. Okay, but the rod tip will bust right off with the lead. Yes, exactly. 1 second. So you get the fish up and make sure that the balloon doesn't go in the water. Obviously, we don't want to pollute. Turtles eat balloons. We don't want to kill any turtles. So make sure that all of the balloons stay in the boat. Never discard the balloons. Don't just leave them lying on the deck where when you're moving the boat, they blow off. You don't want that to happen. Make sure they're in a hold or in some sort of compartment. That's also why a lot of guys use the milk jugs, you know, so this way no balloons go in the water. Plus the milk jugs are reusable. You know, you can put glow lights inside them and they illuminate like a light bulb, okay, which is a good idea as well. So, yeah. So in turn, the fish comes up next to the boat. Regardless of the size, you're gaffing that fish. Be very, very careful. Be very careful putting that fish in the boat. Make sure that somebody is securing that bill. You know, take your time. Don't get overzealous. Okay, that's when mistakes happen. That's when people get hurt, when you get overzealous and you get too anxious. You got him. Once there's gaffs in him and the fish is laying there just, you know, flopping around, he's done. He's toast. You know, relax. And if it isn't a giant fish, you have really nothing to worry about. If it is a very big fish, get a tail rope on him. You know, a tail rope or a flying gaff, and then he's really not going anywhere. The law right now states that you are allowed to keep how many swordfish? Anybody know? Nope. 4. Okay, 1 per person, 4 per boat. Did you say 16? I love this guy, man. 4. 100%. So you know, he said, hey, when you're bringing that fish into the boat, it's important to talk about how to hold that bill. Remember this, unlike, you know, say sailfish or even blue marlin, a swordfish's bill is flat. Okay, it's flat. It's like taking a sword, laying it on its side. You know, it's flat. It's not round. It's very jagged on both sides. You know, you've got to be very careful when you're wearing these gloves and you grab that bill. You know, I like to grab it firmly from the side. You know what I'm saying? To where it can't swipe at you. You know, you got to really, really be careful. Put your thumbs together. You know, like even on all bill fish, if your thumbs are together, you can get a good grip on that bill. Okay. And again, safety number 1. So once you get that fish in the boat, remember what I just said, the law is you're allowed to keep 4, okay? 1 per person, 4 per boat, minimum size 47 inches. 47 inches from the lower jaw fork length. That means from the bottom of its jaw, the lower jaw, to the fork in its tail. Has to be 47 inches. If you have to measure it, you shouldn't keep it. Okay, I'm going to tell you that right now. If you have to measure it, if you're like, oh, I don't know if it's a keeper, 47 and a half, yeah, it's a keeper. And I've kept fish that are 47 and a half, but you shouldn't. Okay, if it's even close, you should let that fish go. Okay, because it hasn't even spawned yet. Okay, they don't reach breeding size until they're like 4 or 5 years old. And by then, the fish is at least 100 pounds. So if it's anything below that, it's a juvenile. You know, there's no question. Tastes real good, but it's a juvenile. Okay, not illegal by any means. Do you need to keep 4? You know, is it really necessary to go out there and catch and kill 4 swordfish? Think about that. How much meat can you eat? How much swordfish meat can you eat? You know, these fish yield a lot of meat. They have a good ratio as to how much edible meat comes off of a 200-pound fish is going to have 150 pounds of meat or close to it. A lot. They yield a lot. So there's certainly no reason, in my opinion, to kill 4. You know, I say you go out there and you catch 1, man, you had a great night. Mission accomplished. Set the spread, try and catch another one. You catch 2, let's go home. Because we got a lot of fish to clean. We still got a long boat ride home at night. Everybody, everybody's happy. We've got plenty of fish. Let's go home. There's no reason to kill 4 swordfish by any means, okay? I can't stress enough that in this fishery, it's all about the details. Swordfish are masters of exploiting your weakest link. Whatever your weakest link is, they'll exploit it. If it's the people that are on the boat who are unfamiliar with sword fishing or unfamiliar with big game sword fishing, I'm telling you, you'll lose every time. If it's the tackle, you know, your line, your connections, your drag is set wrong, whatever it is, these fish will teach you a big fat lesson. I don't know if there's any fish that's more humbling than a swordfish. And anybody that says that they have gone out there and every time they go sword fishing, it's easy peasy and they catch fish after fish, that's not true. That's not true. They're not telling you the truth, okay? People have put in a lot of time and a lot of effort and have been humbled by these fish. And even till this day, they'll still teach you a lesson no matter how experienced you are. Did you have a question?
Yeah. You get one on the boat. Are you dispatching that fish or are you just letting it?
So his question is, you're getting a swordfish on the boat. Are you killing the fish or what are you doing? By the time that you get that fish in the boat, he's done. You know, he's done. He's exhausted himself or herself. All of the bigger ones are females, by the way, like with most fish, certainly billfish. All of the larger ones are females. The females get bigger and live longer. But by the time you get them in a boat, stick a couple gaffs in them, depending on the size of the fish, it's going to be done. You grab that fish, lift it up over the rail or through the door. You don't have to worry about it like a big dolphin or a cobia flipping around, going nuts. It's not going to happen. Okay, it's not. Yes, you got to be careful with that sword, but you know when you really, it's not, the sword can be dangerous, not necessarily from the fish swiping at you, but you're lifting that 100, 200-pound fish over the side, and then it flops on the boat, and you're not paying attention, and your leg is right there. That's when it could really be dangerous. Not to say that it won't swipe at you, but you even have to be, you know, careful handling that fish when you're bringing it off the side. But no, you're not killing it, you're not shooting it, or anything like that. Yes?
If you're fishing a heavy tackle and heavy swordfish out of the rod holder, you need to reinforce the rod holder?
His question is, if you're fishing heavy tackle out of a rod holder, do you need a reinforced rod holder? You know what, if you have a, God, I don't want to downgrade anybody's boats. If you have a cheap boat, okay, if you have a below standard boat that has a cap with no gunnel, okay, I would definitely reinforce the rod holder because there's not even anything that it's bolted to underneath. But it's not like daytime sword fishing where we're fishing with a big LP, you know, a big Linger and Pitman with a tremendous amount of strain, ultra deep water, a lot of lead. That rod holder is reinforced, no question. With this sort of tackle, nowhere near as crucial that the rod holder is reinforced. It's got, you're fishing a much lighter drag. Plus, keep in mind, you're not going to be reeling that fish in from the rod holder the whole time. It's not like it's going to be in the rod holder and you're never going to take it out of the rod holder. That's not going to happen, you know. So yes, it's important that it's reinforced, but nowhere near as important as if you were daytiming. And it also depends on the quality of the boat. And if it's a cheesy piece of crap boat, you probably shouldn't be out nighttime sword fishing, you know, if you have to worry about the rod holder. Yeah, yes.
Do you ever use a drift sock to position your boat?
So-
You're talking about not lining up?
Correct. So his question is, do you ever use a drift sock to keep your boat in the correct position? You certainly can try that. Every boat is a little bit different. The way your boat drifts, my CV drifts parallel, so to speak, so we're often beam to. So we typically don't use a drift sock. A lot of guys do to try and keep them sideways. Sometimes it does help, but it depends on the conditions because sometimes if you have a breeze from a certain direction, it's not going to help you. So it's always a good idea to have it, try it, you know what I'm saying, and see if it helps depending on those conditions. You know, as far as slowing you down, it does slow you down, but I'm not too concerned with the speed. When you're out there, you're drifting with that current, you're not going to outrun these fish, you know what I'm saying? Like in other words, if you're drifting at 4 knots, 3.5 knots, 4.5 knots, 3.2 knots, you know, it's still okay. You know, you're covering ground, and the idea with a drift sock at night is not to slow you down. That's not the ideal scenario, but it is to keep your boat in the right position, for sure. Yes?
Does your normal saltwater license cover that? Or do you have to have an HMS?
So his question is, does your normal fishing license cover sword fishing? And the answer is no. I mean, you need a fishing license, no question, but you need a highly migratory species permit. I think last time I renewed, it's an annual fee. It's $18 or something like that, $20, $22, okay, somewhere in that ball game. Every swordfish you catch must be reported within 24 hours, must be reported. And I want you to understand this. A lot of guys say, I'm not going to report the fish that I catch. You know why I'm not going to report them? Because I don't want the government to know how many swordfish we're catching, because if we catch all of these swordfish, next thing you know, they're going to say, oh, season's closed, okay, and you can't keep 4, now you can only keep 2. And they're going to limit the sword fishery, and that is an incorrect philosophy, and I'll tell you why. Swordfish are managed by ICAT, the International Coalition for the Conservation of Atlantic Tunas. It is an international organization. There is a total amount, and I'm going to use round numbers and say that there are 10,000 tons of swordfish that are allowed to be harvested every year. Each country, each region is allocated a certain percentage of that. So again, using round numbers, of the 10,000 tons, we're allocated 1,000 tons. We never, ever reach our quota, ever. If you what happens is now, by guys not reporting their fish, ICAT looks at it and says, well, we don't need to give the South Atlantic 1,000 tons because they're not catching anywhere near that. They're catching 200 tons. So let's take 500 tons and give it to China, or 500 tons and give it to wherever, the Pacific, you know, wherever it is that they're allocating these allocations. So that is going to hurt us more than if we report the fish. Because if everybody reported every fish that they caught, we're still not approaching that quota, because the quota is far beyond what we're catching. So every fish should be reported. I don't make the laws, that's what the law is, and you should abide by the law. Okay, and you should report your fish. Yes? So his question is, do you recommend the same depth in Key Largo? I would have to say yes. I don't swordfish off of Key Largo, but I would certainly have to assume that at nighttime, that 1,000 to 1,200 feet is an ideal depth there as well off of Key Largo. I mean, I know it is all the way down off Key West, off Almirada, and it is off Miami, so there's no reason why it wouldn't be off of Key Largo as well. Okay?
By the way, HMS is the boat, not the access. So the HMS permit is on your boat.
Correct. So just to clarify that a little bit more, you know, like you're saying your license, every angler has a fishing license, but the boat itself has to have that highly migratory species permit that we talked about. So if you were to come sword fishing with me, you don't need your own permit. You're covered under my permit as long as my boat has that HMS permit. Yes, the boat itself has to have that federal permit. Okay? Yes?
What about the moon?
Excellent question. So the moon. This is probably one of the biggest questions when it comes to sword fishing. What is the best moon phase? Well, understand that swordfish don't like light. So when there's a full moon, the belief is that they won't come as close to the surface. That doesn't mean don't go sword fishing. It means fish your baits deeper. So instead of fishing 50, 100, 200, 300, 400, fish 200, 300, 400, 500. Just move everything down in the water column a little bit. If there's no moon, fish your typical spread. However, this is what I say. When you can go sword fishing, go sword fishing. Okay, don't look at the moon and go, oh man, it's a full moon, I'm not gonna go. Or, oh, it's a quarter moon, I'm not gonna go. The weather's perfect, my wife says I can go. I don't have to babysit. I don't have work tomorrow. My 3 drunk friends are not drunk for the first time, and they want to go. But damn, the moon isn't right. Sorry, guys, we're going to drink, okay? No, go. Go whenever you can go. Make a mental note of it, of what the moon is. And I'm telling you this. You ask the best sword fishermen out there, they'll all tell you. They'll say, when it's a full moon, sometimes we don't catch them because they tend to stay deeper. And when there's no moon, it can be excellent. And they'll also tell you that when you least expect a good bite is when there's a good bite. Like in other words, there are no guarantees in fishing. The only guarantee is that there are no guarantees. So don't base your trip just on the moon. Okay. Also, when there's a full moon, that affects the current. And often you have a faster current. But the Gulf Stream's moving at 3 to 5 knots no matter what anyway. No matter what. So if it's moving at 4 to 5 knots instead of 3 to 4 knots, I'm okay with that. Okay. It doesn't matter. So go whenever you can go. Yes?
My question on the safety front, running hard at night, don't have infrared, you just kind of winging it?
So his question is, at nighttime, I don't have I don't have a night vision camera. I'm running at night. If you have radar, of course, certainly use your radar. If you don't have, what's that? If you don't have radar, doesn't mean you can't go. You certainly can, but pay attention. Have spotters. Even on my boat, listen, with a night vision camera and radar, when whoever's on my boat and we're running at night, I'm like, you're looking this way and you're looking this way. Okay, and I'm looking this way. And we're all looking together, because if something happens, we're all in the same boat. No pun intended. And nobody wants anything to happen. So let's all work together to make sure that we get home safe and sound. I don't care what technology you have on your boat. I'm not trusting my life with a $2,000 black box that has little blips, okay? Because you never know. You don't. So your eyes don't lie. I made a huge, huge mistake one day. Almost cost me my life, okay? And the people that were on the boat with me. No radar, 28-foot center console, running in at night from sword fishing, just same scenario, no infrared camera, and I'm running in, not super fast, 30 miles an hour, okay, coming in. It was a nice calm night, and I can see what I thought was a freighter coming up the beach. But when you're looking at the lights of the city behind, it's hard to differentiate running lights and a freighter, and as I'm running, and now my brother's on the boat and he's going, dude, is that a freighter? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think so. And we're getting closer and closer and running, and then I realize it is in fact a freighter. And I decide I'm going to blow by him, okay? And I'm just going to punch it. And I did and made it by him, but I absolutely should not have done that, because it was really, really close. Like really, like I'm going, oh, hi, okay, like really, really close. So play on the side of caution, go slow, go slower. You're only fishing, by the time you come in at night, you're less than 20 miles. Usually 17 miles offshore. So you're 30 to 60 minutes. It's not a long boat ride. 60 minutes if you're practically trolling speed, Go slow, but you absolutely can do it at night with no radar and no night vision camera. Absolutely. Just, pay attention, have guys looking around, and have situational awareness. That's what I call it. Know what's happening around you, by all means.